We live in a time where it's very challenging to be in sync with our natural cycles. This is what an ultradian performance rhythm looks like, and this thing repeats through the whole day and night throughout our life. Ultradian means many times a day, and rhythms refer to the regular up and down wave patterns these cycles follow. One of the core principles of ultradian rhythms is that they're based on stimuli and response, with a recovery period in between. This implies one stimulus at a time for one response at a time. The problem is that this almost never happens in a modern work environment. From the moment you show up at the office to the moment you leave, you've interacted with 20 people, you've been asked to complete 5 tasks, you've had to deal with 3 unexpected items that popped up during your day, and none of those things happening to you respond to any type of cycle. It's just all over the place. How do we change that? In this video, we're going to focus on what ultradian rhythms mean in our modern society and how to better adapt our schedule to match our natural cycles. And in order to study that, we need to take a bit of a bird's eye view first and quickly cover circadian rhythms as well. Circadian rhythms are physical, mental, and behavioral changes that follow a 24-hour cycle. These natural processes respond primarily to light and dark, and they affect most living things, including animals, plants, microbes, and us, humans. This is what a basic circadian rhythm looks like for humans. It covers a whole day and is usually represented as a circular diagram. Ultradian rhythms are based on a much smaller time frame and represented on the horizontal timeline. They're like mini versions of circadian rhythms. They're much shorter, they repeat several times a day, as we said, and not being in sync with them will cause us to be tired, stressed, and less efficient. So how do we break that bad cycle? So we've mentioned in the intro that we get way too much stimuli during our typical workday at the office, and it doesn't respond to or work along any type of cycle. But the thing is, not only does the cycle get broken that way, but the speed at which this happens is often exhausting too. I mean, have you ever tried to count the number of interruptions you get while you work at the office? You'd probably quickly lose count. Assuming one productive cycle without interruptions is 90 minutes long, you'd be lucky to get 2 or even 1 full cycle done during your working hours. Meetings often follow one another without much structure or routine over the week, and this doesn't help to try to stick to regular cycles. If you're lucky, you may have some weekly check-ins that always happen at the same time, and that's actually great. But let's face it, the bulk of a typical work week is usually not structured. It's fine to have a meeting that lasts only 30 minutes, but if it's followed by 2 back-to-back 1-hour meetings, your ultradian healing response, which is when you're the most tired, is basically happening right in the middle of your 3rd meeting, and that's not going to bode well with your productivity. But interestingly enough, things were not always that way. The world used to be a much slower place. So I've talked about circadian rhythms in my content before, and I argued that our natural circadian rhythms started being challenged with the advent of industrialization and its main actors like Henry Ford. It's pretty easy to see how working almost non-stop 8-hour shifts at a factory would mess with natural cycles. That's what the guys working for Henry Ford had to do. But at least these guys at the factory lines knew when their day or their shift would end. Right? They knew they got to go home at night and relax after a long workday, and they didn't have to worry about anything work-related until the next day. What really started messing with our ultradian rhythms is technology, which brought work into every single aspect of our lives. I mean, nowadays, you can keep checking your emails as soon as you get home. You can stress about deadlines all the time because you always have access to your work calendar or your work laptop. You often don't have to physically be in the office to have access to your work files, to send a quick Slack message in bed. So you take that and you add on top of it the huge recent advances in artificial intelligence and augmented reality, and within a few decades, probably even less, we'll all be connected to our work 24/7, through our VR glasses, sending prompts to ChatGPT while asking our virtual assistant why the 10 emails from an hour ago are still not replied to, right? And of course, it's not just work crushing our ultradian rhythms. It's not the only culprit here. There's also social media. There's Instagram, for instance, which makes us more stressed by trying to either emulate the life of the people we follow who seem to have it better than us, or by trying to impress others and seeking validation through fake posts that don't reflect our actual non-enviable life. So in an ever busy world that's getting ever busier, what's the solution to be more in sync with our ultradian cycles? It's one word, 4 syllables: Pomodoro. Francesco Cirillo was an Italian entrepreneur who always had a lot on his plate and never seemed to have time to work on the important stuff. He decided to start using a physical timer, and he found a tomato-shaped one in his kitchen, hence the name of the method. And he used that timer to try and organize his schedule and his work one thing at a time. He experimented with different time intervals and he settled on 25-minute work sessions and 5-minute breaks. After 3 of those cycles, he had a longer 20 to 30-minute break. Does that ring a bell? Does that sound familiar? That's right, the Pomodoro approach matches almost exactly the natural ultradian cycle timeline. And if you want to try it for yourself, you can do that with those 4 simple steps. Number 1, decide on the tasks to be done. Number 2, set the Pomodoro timer, typically for 25 minutes, and work on the task. Number 3, end work when the timer rings, no matter where you're at in the task, and take a short break, typically 5 to 10 minutes. You can take a quick walk, you can have a light stretching session. Number 4, go back to step 2 and repeat until you complete 4 Pomodoro cycles. Then take a long break of 20 to 30 minutes, and once that's finished, return to step 2 again and repeat the cycle as many times as necessary. The Pomodoro technique has seen a huge increase in popularity in the past decade, mainly following the explosion of online content around productivity, time management, and personal organization, very much like this video. But there's a reason that these topics have stayed in fashion for so long. People are overwhelmed and looking for solutions. And of course, the Pomodoro technique is not the one answer to all the stress and anxiety you may get from work. You know, those are sometimes much more deeply rooted problems, and that's a video for another day, right? But if those feelings are related to your workload, your schedule, or the speed at which things are moving in your work environment, then this technique may help you to get back on track while being able to take a breather, even if it's a small one. And finally, here are some great Pomodoro resources to get you started with a method. In general, I don't recommend using a Pomodoro app on your phone because it's too easy to get distracted by notifications coming in, but up to you. So PomoFocus, that's the OG Pomodoro website with all the customizable options available. You also have Forest app while you're working and not being distracted. This browser extension grows a nice virtual tree for you. And once you've grown a bunch of trees, you'll get a nice little forest. That's a nice little incentive to stay productive. Then you have TickTick, my favorite productivity app of all time. You can do 1,000 more things than just Pomodoro with TickTick. But if you're already using the app and you like to keep your number of tools to a bare minimum like me, you can just use the timer, the whole Pomodoro setup in there. And finally, a static Pomodoro timer. If you're someone who cares about aesthetics even while being productive, this has got you covered. It's a Pomodoro timer that is nice to look at, even with an option to listen to some chill vibes while working. That's it for this week's video. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you found this content interesting, insightful, useful. If you did, remember to like and to subscribe if you're not already. It really helps me grow the channel and it motivates me to create more content like this. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day and I'll see you in the next video.